first Trump term to examine. John, briefly, what can we learn from looking back at Trump's first term and how he and Education Secretary Betsy DeVos managed the Department of Education?
So what we didn't see massive change to the structure of our kind of core American education system. And interestingly, one of the first priorities of the Trump administration was they pushed for one of those private school choice programs. A federal tax credit scholarship program, which works in a different way than vouchers, but it's functionally the same thing. And they couldn't get it passed. And they couldn't get it passed in part because they ran up against Republican opposition to the idea, because if you're a Republican who represents a rural district in particular, you may not have a lot of private schools around. And so I think a lot of those representatives were looking around saying, how would this benefit my constituents? And so a lot of the kind of big policy ideas that people were talking about actually materialized in ways that I would expect they might not. Same goes for serious cuts to Title I, serious cuts to some of those programs. Now, they did change the interpretation of Title IX, for example. So some of what Dana is talking about here when it comes to gender identity is related to Title IX. There's other aspects related to sexual discrimination, sexual assault, sexual harassment, how that is enforced and how it's defined. They did do quite a bit there because they can do that unilaterally. They can do that through regulations and not through acts of Congress. And that is why I'm expecting to see a good bit of that.
And John, just really quickly, because we've got about a minute left here, what do we know about Trump's new pick for Secretary of the Department of Education, Linda McMahon?
We don't know a whole lot about her priorities. I think she's going to push on deregulation. That is consistent with her background. I think she is an advocate of private school choice programs, and we'll see. I mean, she has some questions to answer in her confirmation hearings for sure.
Dana, as you look ahead to the first weeks and months of the incoming Trump administration, what are you watching for in particular?
Executive actions and regulatory actions on civil rights. So particularly gender identity, around race. I think they may try again to introduce some sort of school choice tax credit scheme to Congress, and they may have more success this time, given, I think, some real shifts in the Republican Party due to the experience of COVID and the energy that some of these state-level voucher efforts have had.
That was Dana Goldstein. She's a reporter covering education and families for the New York Times, and John Ballant, director of the Brown Center on Education Policy at Brookings. We also heard from 1A's Todd Swillick. It was part of our .gov series that aired last month. You can listen back to the entire series at v1a.org. This program comes to you from WAMU, part of American University in Washington, distributed by NPR. I'm Jen White. Thanks for listening. We'll talk again tomorrow. This is 1A.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Indeed, designed to be an end-to-end hiring solution for businesses of all sizes to attract, interview, and hire candidates, all from one platform. Learn more at Indeed.com/NPR. From Viking, dedicated to creating travel experiences for the thinking person, with programs designed for cultural enrichment on board and on shore. Learn more at Viking.com. And from ECMC Foundation at ECMCFoundation.org.
Remember a lot of life's firsts. First job, first day at school, and of course, our first love. But the landscape for romance has changed, especially for younger people. Still, the feelings endure. On the next 1A, we share your stories and break down first loves and everything that comes with them.
It's nearly 11 o'clock, which means the Larry Mueller Show is coming up next. Then at 1, it's On Point, followed by The World at 2, and All Things Considered at 3. Later, catch Wisconsin Today at 7 p.m. here on WPR News.
Be fully awake to your day with Wisconsin Today.
Hi, I'm Ron Ferret.
I'm Kate Archer-Kent.
Wisconsin Today is a great chance to bring people around the state together and realize we kind of all share the same neighborhood, even though we don't see each other.
And also attending to the news of the day in our state through that lens and understanding the world around us. That's really what I love about Wisconsin Today. Wisconsin Today,
Weekday mornings at 9 on WPR News.
Give her some of that shake.
90.9 WUWS, Ashland. This is WPR News.
Today, our guest tells us why getting a colonoscopy is important for your health, and we'll hear about new ways to detect colon cancer. Larry Mueller here. Thanks for joining us on WPR News. Dr. Nadim Safidi, our guest today. He's a gastroenterologist with the Mayo Clinic Health System. He practices in Bloomer and Eau Claire. We'll also talk with Dr. Safidi about general gastrointestinal health, including conditions like acid reflux and ulcers. At noon, we'll talk about the latest research involving eye transplants, and we'll take your questions about vision health. But first, give us your questions about preparing for a colonoscopy. What do you want to know about the procedure, or maybe about colon cancer? Number to call 800-642-1234. Email to talk@wpr.org.
You don't like them?
Live
from NPR News
He's my
in
least
Washington,
favorite
I'm
host
Lakshmi Singh.
out of all
President
NPR
Trump
shit.
is hosting Jordan's King Abdullah II at the White House today. Their meeting taking place against the backdrop
It's not like I hate him.
ceasefire and hostages for prisoners
A
agreement
lot of the
between
times it
Israel and
shows
Hamas in Gaza. Yesterday, Trump proposed a ceasefire be canceled if Hamas does not release all remaining hostages taken since the start of the war. Trump has also promoted Israel hand control of Gaza to the United States and relocate the Palestinian people to other parts of the peace and idea, strongly opposed by Arab governments across the region. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell says the central bank's not in a hurry to continue cutting interest rates.
We know that reducing policy restraint too fast or too much could hinder progress on inflation.
Testifying before the Senate Banking Committee today, Powell says inflation is still somewhat elevated over the Fed's 2% goal, but has eased significantly over the past 2 years. U.S. embassies are struggling to oversee humanitarian aid the Trump administration is allowing. That's according to the Inspector General of the U.S. Agency for International Development, NPR's Michelle Kellerman.
When the Trump administration came to office, it put most foreign aid on hold, but Secretary of State Marco Rubio has allowed for emergency humanitarian relief to continue. The trouble is, USAID staff around the world have been getting mixed signals, losing access to their emails and being put on administrative leave before a judge temporarily halted that. Now, USAID's Inspector General is reporting that the agency has limited ability to oversee what aid is going through. There's food aid at risk of spoilage, according to the report, and a concern that there's not enough staff to vet partners in the Middle East to make sure U.S. taxpayer money is not benefiting terrorist groups. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
The first of 3 predicted storms packing a little bit of everything winter has to offer is on the move. NPR's Giles Snyder with details.
The first storm is moving east out of Kansas, where Governor Laura Kelly has declared a state of emergency.
Fuck, we ain't getting shit around here.
And ice accumulations to the mid-Atlantic.
A little cold, that's
Kentucky to southern New Jersey. And Virginia Governor Glenn has also declared an emergency with warnings of treacherous travel conditions and potential power outages. On the heels of the first storm, another round of heavy snow from the second storm is expected from Kansas and Missouri into the Great Lakes. It will be on the East Coast by Thursday morning. A third significant storm is expected to bring a threat of flooding to California, especially to areas devastated by last month's wildfires around
I have the power!
45 points, the NASDAQ is down 94. You're listening to NPR News.
He-Man.
This is Wisconsin Public Radio News at 11:04. I'm Alex Crow. Federal programs supporting conservation projects have been frozen as part of the Trump administration's halt on climate change funding. As Hope Kerwin reports, the freeze has left some Wisconsin farmer groups footing the bill.
Dairy Grazing Apprenticeship is a national nonprofit based in Wisconsin. They receive funding from a few federal programs, including a nearly $5 million grant awarded under the Biden administration. Executive Director Joe Tamandel says the 5-year project requires them to front the cost of work and staff salaries before being reimbursed the following month. but he currently can't submit invoices because of the halt on federal funding.
We have not been instructed to stop work or anything like that. Reports and everything are still due. They're being accepted.
Some grocery
but
store
we're just
music.
not getting reimbursed.
He worries the uncertainty around funding could impact farmers' willingness to participate in the project this spring. Hope Kerwin, Wisconsin Public Radio.
Meanwhile, a federal judge has temporarily blocked a planned funding cut to the National Institutes of Health. The cuts applied to grants that support research institutions, including UW-Madison. The reduction would eliminate approximately $65 million in funding to UW-Madison this year. Attorney General Paul joined 22 other states in a federal lawsuit trying to fight those cuts. UW-Madison says the decision to cut federal funding for research will delay life-saving discoveries and could cost jobs. More news at WPR.org. This is WPR.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Capital One, offering their premium travel card, Venture X. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. Details at CapitalOne.com. And listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
Support for WPR comes from Bagels Forever, available fresh daily at the store in Madison, and the frozen fruit case in grocery stores throughout the state.
Too?
Bagels and bagel chips can be shipped anywhere.
Yeah.
Bagels Forever.
Yeah.
WPR is your home for national, international, and Wisconsin news. From breaking stories to the latest from the state capitol. Informed political and economic coverage, stories about the environment, intriguing conversations, and more each day on Wisconsin Public Radio.
Great to have you with us on WPR News. Larry Nealer here, and today we start the show by talking everything you need to know about colonoscopies, and we'll be covering general
We don't want to know about them.
health issues as well with our guest, Dr. Nadim Salfidi. He is a gastroenterologist with the Mayo Clinic Health System. He practices in Bloomer and Eau Claire. And Dr. Safidi has an interest in digestive disorders. So as we talk with the doctor, I hope you'll join in as we talk colonoscopies, or maybe you have a general question about GI health. Give a call number 800-642-1234, or you could send an email to talk@wpr.org. Dr. Salfidi, welcome. Thank you for taking time to be with us today.
My pleasure. You're most welcome. Thank you for having me on.
When should we get our first colonoscopy, and how often should you get them?
That's an excellent question. The first thing to consider is whether or not there is a family history of colon cancer, or whether you would be considered average.
Doesn't everyone get that shit?
Cancer. If you're somebody who does not have a family history of colon cancer or of sort of a what we call an advanced adenoma, or a larger type polyp, or more dangerous type polyp, then the current guidelines recommend beginning at the age of 45. And if you undergo colonoscopy at the age of 45 and there are no findings at that colonoscopy, then it's every 10 years.
Okay. Actually, John in Wanakee has a question relating to this. John, hi.
Hello, Larry.
Yeah, what's on your mind, John?
What's on your ass?
Okay, I'm a 78-year-old male. No history in the family of colon cancer. I've had several Cologuard tests. I'm on Eliquis, and I've avoided a colonoscopy.
What's on your ass? I mean, up your ass. I mean, what's up your mind?
Have to worry about taking the tests anymore.
So when's the last time, Dr. Safidi?
Yeah, another good question. That is definitely a question that I get asked all the time. The current guidelines suggest that everybody should get screened up until the age of 75, and then after 75,
forget about
it is
never.
between 75 and 85, then it's really between the person and their doctor. They can discuss whether it makes sense to keep going or not. It depends on whether or not they've ever had screening before, and if they've had any positive findings before, and again, of course, the family history question as well, and also just how healthy that person is, and whether it's whether it's worth keeping going with screening. So basically, up to 75, everybody should get screened. Between 75 and 85, it's a good question to discuss with your doctor to see if it makes sense to keep going or not. And then after 85, for sure, no more screening.
How many, or I should say, how common are colorectal cancers?